Hello everyone and welcome into Coach Craig Sports. This is the MLB DFS Core Pick video for today, Tuesday, May 28th. If you're joining me for the very first time, first of all, welcome in. Second of all, this is how today's video will be structured. We'll be going over a recap of yesterday's picks, seeing how they ultimately ended up turning out. After that, we'll get moved over to RotoWire, take a look at the weather report for today, talk about any games that do have a double-digit chance of rain. And then after that, we'll get moved over to FanDuel, talk about my core picks for today. It's going to be one pitcher, four hitters. It's going to be based on a combination of past performance versus the respective opponent, as well as some recent history. And then after that, we'll get moved over to my cheat sheet and talk about my top GPP teams to stack for tonight's slate overall. The cheat sheet is 100% free. It is up on the sports affiliation website, so definitely be sure to check that out as you're building out your lineups for tonight's slate overall. But without further ado, we'll get started with a recap of yesterday's picks. At the pitcher position, we went with Charlie Morton, $9,700. Thought it'd be a decent matchup against the Washington Nationals. Unfortunately, did not end up being the case. He pitched 5 2/3 innings, gave up 12 hits, 8 earned runs, 7 strikeouts. 4 of those runs he gave up were in the first inning, 2 in the sixth inning. So if you eliminated those 2 innings, it probably looked all right. He was a guy that had been pitching a little bit better as of late, but been kind of up and down this season. So we're just kind of hoping for that higher end upside out of him yesterday. So unfortunately for us, that did not end up being the case. The two highest pitchers yesterday, I believe, were Justin Steele and Robert Gasser in that Brewers-Cubs game, which we talked about being a potential stack game, but both of them pitched very well. And then at first base, we went Paul Goldschmidt, $2,700. He hit a home run yesterday. He was a hit, and he was the top first baseman overall. And then at third base, we had Manny Machado, $3,200. Only got 3 points, so did give him a miss. He was 1 for 4 hitting yesterday. And Ian Happ in the outfield, $2,900. Got to 0 points. He was a miss. 0 for 3 on the day overall for him. The fourth hitter that we initially had was Andrew Montesterios for the Milwaukee Brewers. Looked like he was going to hit leadoff, but unfortunately was not in the lineup yesterday, so I said you could switch over to Willy Adames or William Contreras. If you went to Willy Adames, ended up pretty good, $3,500. He had a home run yesterday, got 28.7 points. He was hitting the top overall shortstop on yesterday's slate. If you went William Contreras instead, he was $4,100, only got 6.2 points, so technically he was a miss. 1 for 4 yesterday with a run scored. So overall, not the greatest day in the world. Obviously a little bit hit or miss there, but like I said, nothing really truly stood out yesterday in terms of hitters, in terms of like pitchers and stuff like that too. So obviously we're just going to highlight the guys that do kind of stand out in that regard, but it was a little bit more variance and type of a day. So building out your lineups the way that you saw fit was probably the best way to do it. And obviously mixing and matching at the pitcher position on days like that where nobody truly stands out or where a lot of guys kind of stand out. But with that being said, we'll get moved over to RotoWire and talk about the weather report for tonight's slate. The one game that is kind of in limbo potentially today is the Chicago White Sox and the Toronto Blue Jays over in Chicago, 61% chance of rain. So we will see if that game ultimately ends up going off or not. So for those of you who don't know, I am a White Sox fan, followed them for a long time. That ground screw, if this game is able to be played, it will be played. That is one of the best parts about the Chicago White Sox in recent years is that they do have a really good ground screw. So not missing too many games there unless, it gets really, really dangerous. And then we move down to the Minnesota Twins and the Kansas City Royals in Minnesota, 15% chance of rain there. So nothing too crazy at this point in time. And then we will get down to the final one, which is out in Colorado, 13% chance of rain there between the Rockies and the Guardians. Obviously with Colorado, the weather out there can change on a dime. So that's one we'll keep an eye out on as the day moves along. As always, if there's any other major changes in terms of weather, I will have that listed down in the comments throughout the day. But with that being said, we'll get moved over to FanDuel and talk about my core picks for tonight's slate. So we are going to start off at the pitcher position today. We got Cole Ragans here at $10,600. I think it's a really good pitching slate as opposed to yesterday where it didn't look that great on paper. Today it looks pretty good whether you want to go to Cole Ragans, whether you want to go to Freddie Peralta, Zach Wheeler, Jesus Luzardo, Nestor Cortez. Those probably be like the 4 or 5 most likely pitchers that I would get to today. But I definitely feel comfortable mixing and matching those 5 just in general. But we got Cole Ragans here going against the Minnesota Twins. A very small sample size there, but he did pitch against them earlier this year. He pitched really well in that start. 43 points in his lone start against the Twins. He has 4 wins on the season. He's got a 3.34 ERA on the season as well. Like 1 or 2 bad starts this year, but other than that, he's been really, really good. So definitely do like getting to him once again today, $10,600. Like the upside that he could present, but he's a little bit higher price there, so if you want to pay down and save a little bit of money so you can pay up at some of your hitting positions, definitely can do that as well. And then obviously if you want to switch out to Zach Wheeler, similar type of price tag as well. Then in terms of our hitters, we got Isaiah Kiner-Falefa here at $2,600. He's a guy that's been hitting the ball pretty well as of late. He's on a 6-game hitting streak. 3 of those games have been multi-hit games. 2 home runs during that time span. 3 of those games have been double-digit games. In his career versus Mike Clevenger, the expected starting pitcher for the Chicago White Sox tonight, he is 4 for 10. Obviously, this is the game with the biggest ring concern, but if he does ultimately end up going off, looks like a pretty solid play, $2,600, pretty good value spot there. And he's a guy that you can essentially play at every position besides catcher/first base, and then obviously pitcher. Shortstop, third base, second base, outfield, whether you want to play him in that mix, you can definitely do it. So a good piece for our lineups tonight overall. And if you look at what he's done on the season, in terms of fantasy points, it's only 6.4. But, when he's kind of got that hot bat, you kind of got to go with him. He does offer a little bit of pop here and there. He does offer a little bit of stolen bases at times, too. Not like the fastest guy in the world, but definitely not slow by any means at the same time as well. And then at shortstop, we're going down to Anthony Volpe, $3,000. He's averaging just under 11.5 fantasy points per game. He's on a 19-game hitting streak at this point in time. 7 of those games have been multi-hit games, 3 home runs during that time span as well, and he has 11 double-digit performances. So for a guy with all that being said, only being $3,000 tonight, going against Griffin Canning of the Los Angeles Angels, who is probably one of the most hit-or-miss pitchers in all of baseball at this point in time, and a guy that does give up some power in a pretty big way, is a pretty good thing just in general. Anthony Volpe is 2 for 5 versus him in his career, so I definitely like the upside that he does present tonight overall. And then next, we're going to go down to his teammate Aaron Judge. He is $4,600, another guy that's on a really good hot streak as well. And if you look at what Aaron Judge has done in his career versus Griffin Canning, 1 for 2 with 1 home run. If you look at what Judge has done so far this season, 279 average, 17 home runs, 39 RBIs, averaging over 14 fantasy points per game at $4,600. He has at least 1 hit in 13 out of his last 14 games. 6 of those games have been multi-hit games. 8 home runs during that time span and 10 double-digit performances. So definitely love the upside of Aaron Judge tonight. And like I said, Griffin Canning, probably one of the pitchers that's given up the most amount of home runs, or at least fly balls to home runs so far this season. So definitely looks like a really good matchup for him. And just because I think I forgot to mention it with what Volpe's done in totality on the season, 282 average, 6 home runs, 23 RBIs, and then once again averaging about 11.5 fantasy points per game at $3,000. And he does have some stolen base upside in there as well. And then last but not least, we got Julio Rodriguez, a guy that hasn't done too much this season, but really starting to turn it on as of late. Had a long hit streak, then had like 4 or 5 bad games, and now he's on a 3-game hit streak. 2 of those games have been multi-hit games, 2 home runs during that time span. All 3 were double-digit performances. He's 3 for 7 versus Hunter Brown. In his career, Hunter Brown is the expected starting pitcher for the Houston Astros tonight. Hunter Brown has an ERA of 7 so far this year, so not very good there, although his last performance was a little bit better. Do like the Mariners team in general against him, especially Julio Rodriguez, who once he starts hitting the ball really well, he's going to be close to $4,000. So we'll take advantage of him when he's still at $3,300. Averaging just under 9 fantasy points per game on the season. He's up to a 265 average, 4 home runs, 19 RBIs on the season. Hopefully this is kind of the big hot streak that gets him going for the rest of the season as well. But with that being said, if you go with the 5 players that I do currently have listed, you have $10,900 remaining, which is just over $2,700 remaining per player. So it's a little bit tighter of a budget. Once again, if you want to swap down from Cole Reagans to someone else, you can definitely do that, save some money that way. Whether you're going down to Jesus Luzardo, Nestor Cortez, those are both very viable options on tonight's slate overall. But there are a decent amount of players that are, in that $2,600 or less range that are pretty viable on tonight's slate overall. Get a little bit creative as you're building out your lineups for tonight's slate. But with that being said, we'll get moved over to my cheat sheet and talk about my top GPP teams to stack for tonight's slate overall. So we're going to start off with the Mariners. Once again, going against Hunter Brown. His ERA is up over 7 at this point in time. He's been very, very bad to start off the year. Coming off probably his best performance of the year, but still, Mariners have hit him pretty well in the past, whether that is Julio Rodriguez, whether it's Josh Rojas, Ty France, a lot of guys that have had some success against him. Heck, I even like J.P. Crawford out there, $2,600, has some upside there as well. Recently came back from injury. And then we got the Atlanta Braves, and they are going against Jake Irvin. Not the longest list of history there, but some of these guys have hit him pretty well in the past. Austin Riley's 2 for 2. Michael Harris, Matt Olson, Ozzie Albies, and I believe Travis D'Arnaud all have hits versus him as well. And then we get moving over to the Phillies, who are going against Spencer Howard tonight. So Spencer Howard bounced around the league for quite some time now. Wasn't pitching that great in AAA, but will be starting tonight for the Giants. So it looks like a really favorable matchup for the Phillies just in general. Not a long list of history there. Nick Castellanos got a hit versus him. Brandon Marsh does as well. but none of these guys really have faced him too much in the past. And then last but not least, I have the Yankees here going against Griffin Canning. Griffin Canning has not had the greatest start to the season. Had a couple decent starts here and there, but other than that, it hasn't been that great. Been giving up way too many home runs, so definitely like stacking this Yankees team tonight overall. But with that being said, that's what I do have in terms of the recap, the weather report, the core picks, and the top GPP teams to stack for tonight's slate overall. As always, if you have any questions related to MLB DFS, be sure to drop them down in the comments, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. As always, I'll be leaving any other updates down there as well, especially in terms of weather updates. You know, if a starting pitcher gets scratched, like yesterday, Austin Gomber got scratched for the Colorado Rockies. And then I will also be listing all these starting lineups as they do come out throughout the afternoon and early evening down there as well. But with that being said, if you are brand new to my channel, checking it out for the very first time, or have yet to subscribe, please consider doing so. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now we have MLB DFS Monday through Friday in terms of the core pick videos, and then I do put out my UFL DFS video once a week that typically comes out on Friday. So definitely be sure to check that out if that's something you're into as well. And then last but not least, if you're interested in sports betting, if you're interested in prop betting whatsoever, be sure to check out the links and promo codes down in the description below for BetUS, Parlay Play, and Prize Picks. If you are a brand new user to any one of those three sites, when you sign up, you make your initial deposit, you will get a first match deposit bonus. For Prize Picks and Parlay Play, it's 100% match up to $100. And then for BetUS, it's 125% match up to $2,500. So some pretty good opportunities to be had out there. If you have any questions related to those whatsoever, feel free to reach out to me, whether it's down in the comments or on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport, and be more than happy to help you with that journey as well. But with that being said, that's all that I truly have for today's video. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in MLB DFS tonight.